Black Skin, White Masks offers a philosophical, clinical, literary, and political analysis of the deep effects of racism and colonialism on the experiences, lives, minds, and relationships of black people and people of color. The book is written in the style of autoethnography, in which Fanon shares his own experiences. He presents a historical critique of the effects of racism and dehumanization on the human psyche. In the first chapter, Fanon explores the relationship between race, language, and culture. Language for Fanon provides entry into a culture. But when black people speak a new language, for instance, let's say if black people speak French, they are reminded they can never be fully French. In chapter 2 and 3, he explores interracial relationships between black and white people. In their desire to become black, people cannot leave behind their blackness. The desire to flee from their race is to flee from themselves. This results in a loss of a sense of self and agency to act in the world. Chapter 4 and 5 analyzes the psychological relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. When black people internalize their oppression as a personal failure, it results in inferiority complex. Chapter 6 discusses how blackness is portrayed as an evil other. Sexualization of black people results in the depiction of them as bodies rather than humans. In the final chapters, Fanon envisions social solutions that transform the racist society and produce conditions of inequality. Appealing to dignity and reason alone will never change the world.
I am an African.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Africa for Dummies podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. As usual, check if you're listening to this on a podcast platform. Be sure to leave us a review and follow us on all platforms if you want to be informed with all things Africa. On our Instagram channel, we update and we inform people about the news that is going on around the continent. Now, today is a bit of a different episode. It's a bit of a relaxed episode, I guess, because we are doing a book review. And to discuss this book review, of course, I have my co-host Zenge, and I am a bad host because I don't have the book with me. So Zenge, introduce yourself as I get the book. Sorry.
Hey everyone, and it's good to be back. We did quite a lot of episodes in the past few months, and Nathan actually thought of this idea of us having reviews of books of very famous, or not really famous and the not so famous Pan-African books and literature, and just having a review of them and seeing what we think about them.
Precisely. And today we have I didn't start out, typically when you're starting to get into like reading and like all this type of stuff, you start with something a little bit more relaxed, a little bit easy. But I got this idea from Pinterest, where I get most of my ideas, and it suggested this book.
You kind of said it like
handle
Pinterest.
It. Oh, it's, how do you say it again? I always mess that up. How do you say?
And then it's like, wait.
Pinterest.
Pinterest. Is the P?
Pinterest.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, just
never mind.
Yeah.
Before I used to say Pinterest, so
that makes sense.
But anyway, yeah. So the book is Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks. Now, this book, as you can, I don't know if you can tell, but when I got it, it was like proper brand new. But after arguing and fighting with the book, it's like a little bit more worn out. But sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying that shows it.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You read it.
Exactly. And I mean, because it was really a lot of wrestling with the book. And before I start, I think it's necessary for one to actually give a disclaimer, because typically when people are talking about things like black white, there is a typical assumption to sort of believe that the points that are going to be stated or the ideas are anti-white, So I just want to give that disclaimer to simply state that this episode or this book isn't necessarily a anti-white book, and I think there's some people who've sort of hijacked the author and also the book to sort of represent this um attitude of like, oh, sort of pointing the woes of the world to solely on white people. And I just want to offer that disclaimer that this is actually not the case. And I think this book, as the name kind of suggests in a way, is actually a challenge for black people, or people, African people, yeah, typically for African people is what I'll definitely. I'm just looking on the other screen just to sort of look at the talking points that I had, and I think the one of the talking points I had is that the central idea of this book is sort of stopping black people or African people or people that come from former colonies typically to stop and ask themselves, why am I doing the things that I do? Am I living my authentic life, or am I living my life authentically, or am I performing for a system that was never built for me? So why am I doing the things that I do? Why do I dress the way I do? Why do I talk the way I do? Why is that a how can I say, a expression of who I am, or has that been hijacked and influenced? Because, for example, me and you, we come from Zambia, right? And in Zambia, one would argue, especially during the time that we're studying or we're growing up, there was a lot of things that were still kind of like remnants of the colonial system. An example would be you were not allowed to speak your own language in
school.
In school, right? And it was called vernacular. You weren't allowed to. There was a certain way that you're supposed to wear. You had to have your hair. It had to be cut. It had to be this. There's a certain way that you had to. Exactly. There was a certain way in which you had to be, and a lot of that, as Frantz Fanon claims, is sort of pushing you to be more like what the colonial ideal was, which was this idea of whiteness, right? So like something as simple as telling yourself, or the simple fact of not being allowed to speak your own local language in school, right? What he would say is that it how can I say this, it sort of tells you that in order for you to make it in this world, you have to adopt like something from a colonial system. Like you have to speak their language. You have to be more like them in order to succeed. You cannot succeed in this world simply focusing on your, like, simply with your culture and your language and that sort of a concept. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm looking at his bio and his background. He's someone from the African diaspora, so I'm sure he's from the African diaspora. He was born in 1961, and that decade was a decade of Africa in terms of independence. In 1960, at least 17 countries or so got independent. He has links to the sort of French Caribbean colony because he was born in Martinique.
Martinique.
Yeah, he was born in Martinique, and I think also the fact that he lived in, I think he lived in the United States. He died in the United States in Maryland. He's got I say African diaspora because I'm just referring to everyone who is outside the continent of Africa, so including the Caribbeans.
Right.
He speaks of that because I think he's also living in a context where there's a lot of, this is a majority white countries, for example, like the United States, and this idea of like making yourself palatable for white people. And I've not only heard it with him, but also just in in other studies, like so this is the study of studying. I forgot the word. I think it's ontology, right?
Ontology. Yeah, he uses that
Ontology,
word
right?
quite a lot.
The
Yeah.
study of studying, for example, like the center of the world is a white one. It is a Western or global North rather perspective. Almost like when and I saw this thing about this content creator. I forgot his name, but he was talking about the former first lady of Ivory Coast. Her name was Therese Houphouët-Boigny, the wife of President Felix Houphouët-Boigny, and
Cool name.
when she went to visit John F. Kennedy, American press labeled her the Jackie Kennedy of Africa because of how fashionable she was. But then that's an easy thing that we just ignore. Why? Like, I don't. It's you can say it's about perspectives, but at the same time, many of us sort of try and translate and accommodate ourselves with what the West thinks. Like, oh, how do you say Shima in English? There is none. It's not. It's
How?
not. You know what I mean? Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to give me an English description of your traditional food for it to be sellable internationally. And I think the Japanese, at least Japanese now, it's like a cool thing. Like, if you don't know what kimchi is, then
Right.
like, what's wrong with you? Like, hello,
Yeah.
live in the culture. But like,
Yeah.
somehow I have to explain African food
Yeah.
in white terms, like, oh, mahogany worms. No, it's not mahogany worms. We have the local names for it. In Zambia, it's
Is that
you know?
Inkubikubala? Oh, okay. It
Yeah,
sounds better than
yeah.
it. That sounds
You have to, like-
online. That does. That sounds way more palatable than Vinkubala.
Palatable.
Anyways,
right?
yeah.
Because it's English
Sorry.
words.
Yeah, sorry.
But
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. You have to. I see it not only in the way you like dress and the way you talk and your mannerisms, but also in things like food and things that don't have an equivalent in most cases are often forced to have some kind of equivalent or reference point. Like even when you say superstars, you have to say, for you to explain this to a wider audience, even among Africans, you have to say, Makitu is the Jay-Z of Zambia. Like, why can't you say
Right,
Jay-Z is
right.
the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just, I kind of, that's where I'm meeting him on this because I think Africans, for a long time, you have to always explain everything, over-explain everything, and find equivalents for people to understand what you're trying to say. But yeah, go ahead. That's just
I think.
my.
I think
my
no.
first-
I think I think you're touching on some great points that like. I think there is in almost everything that we do, in almost every facet of life, essentially that we have. Like when you go to work, when you go to there is a especially as a person that, and I think he uses these examples mainly of people that have moved to Europe or other Western countries. And I think an example he gives is like somebody that, lived in France and then, goes back to not Martinique, but I forget the French island off the top of my head. But this person goes back to this former French colony, and now he doesn't even know his culture anymore, and he speaks and he overemphasizes the way he speaks French, in an attempt to quote unquote achieve the highest value, which is whiteness. So like the idea is that colonialism sort of hijacked the African mind, and it changed. And
wait,
it
wait.
gave. Yep, good.
It's not ontology. It's epistemology.
Oh,
In my
okay,
head, I had
okay, yeah.
epidemiology, but actually it's epistemology.
but he does
study
use the
of
word
knowledge.
ontology quite a lot. Yeah.
The ontology is the
so-
study of being, like
Being right, yeah,
whereas the other one is the
and
study
that's
of,
what.
like knowledge and understanding.
Yeah. And so he talks about, somebody that like moves from France and then all of a sudden, spends so much time and effort trying to speak French, even better than the French person, and has to sort of, and when he goes back to his hometown, he sort of speaks, he forgets about his culture and sort of looks down on his culture in an attempt to become, in an attempt to become white. Now, the two things sort of happen when you are reading, when when he's talking about this thing where it's like, in your different areas of life. He talks about relationships as well, where he talks about from the perspective of a African and a black woman with a white man, and a white man and a black man with a white woman. And he talks about how, like, for a lot of people, now I don't know if this is where maybe you'd like to jump in. He says it's important for black people to sort of also ask themselves those, like, these questions, even in those circumstances. Like, why am I having a relationship with a white person? Is it because I genuinely love this person? Because from his or am I trying to escape my Africanness? Right? And for him, he says his definition is that if there is, when it comes to love, if you're doing it because of an economic or because of trying to escape that Africanness, then it ceases to be love. Then it's not love at all. Right? And he says that's kind of like problematic. And two thoughts sort of like pop up. I think one thought is that, is Frantz Fanon trying to tell us that, we can't do these things? Like, wouldn't it be sensible? I mean, I'm a person that lives in Europe. I'm learning the language. Is that, is it that we should stop learning the language? Is it that we should? But I think that's not what he's pointing at. Like with Frantz Fanon, what he's trying to say is essentially that, you again ask yourself, why am I learning this language? Is it because I want to get along with people, I want to understand people, I want to speak with people, or am I actually trying to achieve that that colonial mindset of trying to be the white man? And for him, he says that is a paradox in of itself, because you're trying to be accepted by the same system that defines you as less than.
So he's basically saying that marrying someone from the former colonizer is you trying to be accepted.
No, he says there are people who are like that, and that thought can exist.
Yeah. Okay, so how about, in what sense can you do that without thinking that you're trying to be accepted?
Could you repeat that?
In what sense can you, for example, be in an interracial relationship with someone from a former colonizing country and not be in a situation where you are trying to be accepted or trying to be approved by?
No, that can exist. That exists. I think the thing that he's saying is that I don't know if I'm using this correctly, but the onus is on you. Like, you, unfortunately, because of the history of colonialism, like, you have to you can also choose not to do these things. That's perfectly fine. However, he would say that you would then you would then not know if the way you're living is a function of you yourself choosing to live like that, or it's a function of the colonialism that sort of that sort of happened in the past. So the question is, am I, as a person, let's just say assume I was with a white person, I would have to ask myself, am I, as a person, dating this person because I genuinely love them, or am I doing it to escape my Africanness?
Inferiority.
Inferiority complex. Thank you for saying that. That one of the things he states actually is that colonialism brought with it inferiority complex on two levels, and the first level is the economic, and the second level is I think I forget the word, but I think maybe on a personal level, that type of a thing. So yeah, so the idea is, like, am I actually dating this? So back to the example where it's like I'm dating a white person, right? The question I have to ask myself is, am I dating this person because I genuinely love their character and I definitely love who they are, or am I doing this to step up economically, or am I doing this because of my inferiority complex, to say that dating a white woman is sort of seen as something that's better than an achievement? Exactly. And I'll be very honest. I've met people, and I've heard that narrative before. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say that. Right? I've heard that narrative before in Africa, especially, where people would tell you, especially like when you're going. When I was coming to Europe, people would pull me to the side and be like, make sure you get yourself a white woman, that type of a thing. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I
you
think
know what I'm saying? Like there are certain
yeah,
people who see that as an achievement,
that's the
and
only thing. That's the only thing in their mind when that happens. I think it's.
exactly.
I think you have to. I'm not gonna try and say post-racial, but I'm gonna say you have to be very. I feel like you have to be very case by case with these things because these are very personal and intimate type of connections that we're talking about. And I've heard of those things before. Like we grew up with these stories. Like when
We
you
grew
see
up,
a
yeah.
black woman with an older white man in Zambia, in Malawi, you're like, that's the that's the rumor, right? Then when you see they're the same age, then suddenly the rumors reduce because the proportionality of like the chances of the power imbalance. Because the traditional assumption is that an older white man comes to Africa, gets a poorer black woman, takes her, gives her a nice, beautiful, strong passport from Europe or America, and then they have a mixed race baby who is in a very good standard of living, or even one of
Yeah.
our own black children who have a much better standard of living than if she had married someone of her same age from the same community. So
Yeah.
the immediate assumption is economic, right? An economic marriage. Like there was a pure, clear ambition. And it almost vilifies these black women to the extent that, they're almost considered like quite slanderous. Second class people. And then even on the European side, that's something that Frantz Fanon doesn't talk about. But even on the European side, when you look at the narratives of white men who go to Asia, for example, they are often considered like the rejects. Like I've seen many memes that talked about it, like the rejects of their societies. Either that or like they're looking for. There's so many stereotypes around it. Either that or they're looking for women that are supposedly more pliant, more humble, more traditional, as opposed to the highly educated, high achieving European women, which is silly because it's also the assumption that there is no sort of like working professional women in Africa, that working professional wealthier white man will be pursuing. So there's so many things there. I feel like there's so many variables and so many things that you intertwine. And then there's obviously the student, that classic student, international student relationship story that many people have also talked about. But at the same time, there is obviously the malign interest that you hear in all of these documentaries when older Gambian lady goes to the Gambia, which became famous for the beaches filled with younger men that are basically poaching older elderly British women, and basically making a killing out of them getting married and then eventually getting British citizenship and then leaving them. Making money and contributing, sometimes not even leaving them, but using their money and sending it back to their families in Africa. So there's so many, I feel like there's so many variables here. It's very hard to generalize.
No, I mean, I don't think
it's very,
France is. Sorry to cut you off, but I don't think that the author.
I'm giving it like a modern.
Yeah.
I know he wrote this several times.
No.
Several years.
My point is that he's not saying that when I see a interracial couple, I should basically now sit down and be like, well, what are the using Jordan Peterson, what are the situations that what I'm saying? Like you start like, well, are they getting married because of this? No, like that's not for me to do. Like that's not my that's not my thing to do. But as a person that is, I think he's sort of painting the not narratives but the potential, I don't want to say hazards, but he's sort of showing you like sort of drawing up some hazards that potentially could be occurring because of colonial traumas.
I feel like it's a call to check your conscience when you're going into
precisely.
Yeah, it's a call to sort of check your conscience.
Check yourself and ask yourself, hey, okay, am I getting, as I said before, am I getting into this relationship? Because as I said, for him, he would say that if you're getting into a relationship for the economic perspective or because of the inferiority complex, then that's not love at all. And I think you gave an example of, these people who look at these white women and then they get married to them and then they essentially leave them once they get the passport and that sort of aspect.
But then but then there's also criticism from their side, as I mentioned. They are often, like these white guys are often looked down on as like, like where.
Oh, because of, I think it's called the passport bros. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also, I feel like, aside from those stereotypes, both from the side of stereotypes against the so-called, and we have only talked about the white man and the black woman, but also the black man dating the white woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also some of those stereotypes are also very interesting, because for the black man to date the white woman, then he's a very highly accomplished black man. But for the black woman to date or marry a white man,
very true.
Somehow she's almost like, just searching for, just trying to secure the bag. She has almost zero qualifications, stereotypically.
That's true. That is true.
Because that it's like somehow for a white woman to get a black man's name, you have to be over and above the best type of black that there is. But for a black woman to get a white man's name, it's just get whatever you find. That's the type of stereotype that's there. At least when people talk about these things, that's the stereotype. But what did I want to say? I wanted to say that this is actually something that you grow up with. And going back to the same colonial mindset, the colonial mindset of when you grow up, as you grow up, if you're exposed to sort of Western entertainment, which almost everyone is, on a large scale, even if you live in the most, the poorest country in the global south, you know Western movies and series and so on, and your default, and I keep on going back to this, your default understanding of the best type of human being is a white person. Like Yvonne Chaka Chaka, the lady who sang Umkomboti, the famous South African singer, aka Princess of Africa. She said when she was young, she wanted to be white when she grows up. That's what she wanted to be, right? And if you can't be white, then the best thing you can do is marry white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we're looking at Frantz Fanon's sort of rationale,
that's exactly how he describes it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because you grow up, the heroes are white. Although I don't condone. Let me just clarify. I don't condone changing what is white fairy tales into black fairy tales. I condone creating black fairy tales that are suitable for particularly African and black.
And that's what that's what Chinua Achebe said. I think when he realized, I think the first time when he was reading British literature, he realized that he was the savages in the story that people were talking about. But anyways,
but the thing is, you read it. Even history, you read history and be like, Winston Churchill, oh my God, Horatio Nelson, magnificent, all of these people, the famous characters, you grow up loving them, and they're also your heroes. These white heroes also become your heroes. Yet you do not understand your actual place in the realistic context of these particular heroes. But the gist of this is basically that you also assume some kind of white personality in glorifying and watching all of these entertainment products without checking your conscience. And it happens a lot when you're like a teenager, like all of us have, like, when they ask who your crush is, I'm not going to lie to you. When they ask who your crush is when you're younger, they do not expect you to say a black woman. They just don't.
Typically.
It's not, typically you're not expected to say that. But these days maybe it's like a light-skinned one, but that's also another problem. But the assumption is not that you'll be talking about a black woman as very, appealing, attractive. So I don't know. It's something that you grew up with, and there's always that phase. People can deny it, but there's always that phase where you're like, you know what? Wow, if only,
Wow, it's crazy. It's crazy. No, but it's true. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
You grow up with all of these things, these expectations, and
Hannah
You kind of,
Montana.
yeah.
It was very
Your
rare to
crush was
see.
Hannah Montana.
No. I'm saying those were the people that like were on TV at least at that particular point. You know, just see.
Yeah.
Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that. But yeah.
What
I mean,
up?
I definitely.
Who am
Yeah,
I
I
to
mean,
judge? Anyway, but
but yeah, and for me, when I was reading that, I was also asking myself like, how does this like make African women feel? You know, like I think that's also part of the reason why you see these. I don't know if it still exists now, but there was a time period where bleaching was a very, very, very serious problem in many
oh yeah,
African countries because it was
lots of
leading to
bleaching.
some, I think, some skincare problems and conditions, and that's arguably that's
Cancer,
part of the
skin
reason.
cancer.
Yeah, and there was also a very I watched this rapper interview in the U.S. where this guy, he was a black rapper,
Yeah.
and it was on I don't know if I can say the YouTube channel's name, but essentially what he was the interviewer asked, like he said, he doesn't want to be black, and he doesn't want his kids to be black either. And the reason why he said that, I think
Kind
a
of
lot
love
of
the
people.
skin. I don't know if it's a choice.
Yeah, I know, but he was essentially. I think some people reacted to that video were talking about how like he was reacting out of like pain, and probably he was bullied because of his skin color, and that's probably why he's coming to those sort of conclusions, right? And that's again, I think another example of uh a inferiority complex. But now I'm actually curious to get your thoughts on this, because it's just staying on this point particularly because there are other facets of life where I think the book affected me personally, but I just want to stick on this point, and I want to get your thoughts on this because recently an article came out that Kemi
But enough.
Badenoch, yeah,
Yeah.
Kemi Badenoch, Conservative Party leader in the UK, basically stated that she doesn't identify as Nigerian anymore, right? And so when I read that, I kind of thought to myself, is this a example of what Fanon was talking about, where she's trying to escape from her Africanness? And I mean, hearing her story, she doesn't necessarily have too many good things to say about Nigeria, and I mean, I can hear from her experience that it was a very tough upbringing. But in my opinion, I think her conclusion, I think, could be wrong, in the sense that I don't think the conclusion is then to say I am no longer a Nigerian, do not call me a Nigerian, I want nothing to do with Nigeria. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a bit crazy, honestly. Look, she's a computer scientist. She's very well spoken. I've seen her TED talks, and it's quite a convincing argument. She's one of that horde of people that are calling for black people to start voting conservative, and that's what she has been arguing against. And she's often quite strong on her arguments. But she lived in Nigeria as a young child, and she was
Yeah.
actually she was in middle class. She was raised by a middle class family. She wasn't struggling per se, and she eventually even
No,
admitted.
but
Actually,
yeah.
she eventually even admitted that yes, okay, I was in the middle class, but we were also struggling. It's very hard to be in the middle class,
Yeah.
but she's still someone of a degree of privilege. So she can't just pretend that Nigeria was completely hell for her when Nigerian education is what raised her. Her parents were, I think her parents were lawyers or lecturers. Yeah, so they were quite distinguished people themselves, or are. I'm not sure where they are right now. But I think hers is also about what's the word I'm looking for? It's peddling to a particular audience. She's looking at a conservative party. And she's
Conservative. Okay, I see.
yeah,
I see.
she's the leader of the conservative party, and she's also represents a much harder right compared to someone like David Cameron, the former prime minister, who was more on the center right of affairs. So she has to present an undisputed British identity rather than
I see.
a mixed identity. But the thing
I
is, I
see.
don't know where this has particularly worked because Rishi Sunak embraced his Indian identity. He had Diwali, I think
Right.
he had Diwali in Downing Street multiple times, and he
Yeah.
was very proud of it. He was very, very proud of it. He went to visit Narendra Modi. It was like a great, it's not something he was ashamed of at all. And whereas Kemi Badenoch, it's like she has consistently been struggling with her identity. I think she's struggling with her identity. That's what I think she's going through. Because
Okay.
it's not hard to talk about how you do not identify as a Nigerian, but your roots are Nigerian. It's not
Exactly. You
yeah,
can.
it's not wrong to say that, but what she's trying to do is like completely erase the Nigerian side of
The Nigerian
her identity,
identity.
which is impossible. Her full name is Olukemi Olufunto Adekoje Badenoch. Like, come on, like, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I know Nigeria is a hard place to live, and many Nigerians leave Nigeria like in droves and do very well outside, but they don't go to the
Yeah.
extent of pretending that they are not Nigerian or they are
Not
not from Nigeria.
Nigerian.
You can immerse
Yeah.
yourself
I
in those
think.
countries, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I know like the right likes preaching assimilation, but assimilation is not denying your roots and where you are, like where
You're
you're
coming
from.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
it's
I've met a lot of
yeah,
Nigerians that are still very proud of where
yeah.
they
I,
come
I, I
from,
think
and
I think it's
it
she's going
doesn't
through some kind of identity crisis that we don't
identity
know
cri-
about, and it's happening
Yeah.
at the same time as she's conservative leader and she's trying to make herself look like she's undisputably British. But no one is debating that she's not British. She has been in cabinet before.
Yeah. I mean,
She has been
that kind of came
parliamentarian
out of
before. Like, no one
nowhere.
is, yeah, no one is
Sort of
refusing
came.
that she's.
It came
I
out
don't
of
understand.
nowhere. Like, oh, I'm not. I don't identify as
Yeah,
Nigerian
no one is
anymore.
refusing
It's
that.
like,
Like it's not that deep, But if she wants to be
yeah,
British and distance herself from Nigeria, from Africa, please be my
yeah,
guest. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad. I mean, because I think it would have been kind of meant. It kind of would have
no,
meant
I
a lot
mean,
to some people if she. But
yeah,
anyways,
perhaps.
that's for her
But to be
to.
honest, I don't feel like there's a particular loss in someone trying to pretend that they're not people.
Yeah, yeah.
What irritates me is the way people pick and choose when they become African. When there is Ebola, all of
Okay.
a sudden you are emphasizing how you're not African anymore, and how
Right.
oh, actually I'm quarter Puerto Rican or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, when the World Cup is being hosted in South Africa, you're like, oh, Africa is the motherland, origin of mankind. All of a sudden, we are all
Right.
African. It's,
Right.
yeah, it's a bit exhausting. Just accept who you are and where you're from. It's not that some
Precisely.
people are complex tapestries of different nationalities. There's nothing wrong with that either,
Wrong with-
right? You
Yeah.
could be from 5 different countries. Just say it.
And yeah, and I think that's a great point to end that particular aspect or facet, I should say. One other pillar that he touches, well, I don't know if he touches on specifically, but it's something that I started to think about, which was religion. You know, because as I said, he forces,
Spicy.
yeah, he sort of forces you to exist. He wants you to exist as a black person, existentialism, right? He wants you to live life and not be simply responding to the colonialist teachings. And a lot of people are going to see this and think, hey man, this is 2025, why are we still talking about colonialism? But one thing I think people need to understand is that like post-colonialism, it's not like all those things just sort of vanished into thin air. A lot of countries, particularly like the country like Zambia, simply adopted those things, and they simply adopted those teachings, and that's why I was saying that when me and Zenge were in high school, when in primary school, we were essentially like, they were teaching us, hey, don't speak vernacular, and where did all these things come from? They came from the colonialists. So what, of course now things are changing, but at the time we grew up, it was like that. So but one aspect that really touched me was definitely the aspect of religion, right? And so the question then comes is that, am I a Christian I'm Christian, right? But it's like, am I a Christian because I believe in the Christian narrative and I have read enough to basically state that something did happen with
Or
regards
are
to the
you
resurrection?
Christian because you are a slave?
I wouldn't go as far as saying slave, but like,
Okay,
am
fine. Are you a
I am
Christian
I a
because you were
Christian?
brainwashed by colonial forces?
Colonial forces, which is something that I really had to think about that. And I think for me, I truly believe that I am a Christian, although I think the type of Christianity I would say I would follow was sort of influenced a lot by Western society. Because I mean, I ask myself now, why don't I read a lot more on African theology and African theologians and that sort of a thing? It's kind of been beneficial. So like now I'm reading a lot more on African theology and African, African Christian theology and that sort of a thing. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
have anything to say about that.
Well, I mean, you know my views on Christianity and colonial structure. So you won't like it, but
Yeah.
well, I think look, the living in Ethiopia has really changed the way I see Christianity in Africa, because the understanding of Christianity in Ethiopia is very Afrocentric. It's I've talked about how all the like Christian figures, even in the Catholic Church, you go to the Catholic Church, not just the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, but depictions of angels, of Mary, of they
Yeah.
all have afros. Like they all have afros.
Right.
It's very different.
That's,
It's very
that's
different to what I'm
actually
used to. They all
sick.
have afros. They have very tanned, like brown skin. Whereas when you go to Zambia, you see next to a white person on the altar. Yeah, you see a white person on the altar, and then if a white pastor comes from Texas to do some evangelical concert, it's like a big deal.
It's a
White
really
person or a
big deal.
Nigerian pastor is a humongous deal. There are billboards are everywhere, and then you have to stop for a moment and say, is this our Christianity or is it their Christianity? By their, I mean colonial remnants. And this brings me to Lenchina, Alice Lenchina, a Zambian.
Ah, famous. Yeah.
Sometimes you can call her a cult leader. You could call her a spiritual leader, depending on what you think about her. And she had a particular form of Christianity. I don't know the details of Christianity. That could be another podcast in itself, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd like
And
to do that.
the immediate pre-independence government attacked her. But I say pre-independence because it's like a transition between Northern Rhodesia to Zambia. At that time, Zambia had some black people had some kind of governance on autonomy. Kaunda was the prime minister, not the president. Zambia was still under the British Empire. So they bombarded Alice Lenshina's church, and
Which was gaining
and
a lot of followers actually at the time.
a lot of followers. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why it gained a lot of followers, but the idea behind it was that it was supposed to be preaching an Afrocentric Pan-African type of Christianity, and sort of like really,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was going to add. I
yeah,
believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was also the element of miracles as well that was
yeah,
happening.
spiritual
And
healing.
actually,
Was it spiritual
yeah,
healing? I don't know.
yeah, exactly. And actually, what's very interesting is I think we even had an episode with a pastor who had mentioned this, and I actually have a book here called Christianity in Sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of the reason why Christianity boomed within Sub-Saharan African countries because a lot of Christians like Lenshina took Christianity for themselves, which actually pissed off a
Yeah,
lot of the missionaries. But go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to add that too. Yeah.
yeah, no, no. I was more or less done. I was just saying that these were sort of elements and attempts at Africanizing Christianity because Christianity was one of the main vessels, or one of the main vessels of the colonization of Africa, by and large.
Right.
Um, in the Angola, what is today Angola, many of the kings and chiefs were forced to adopt Christianity and become Christian and be baptized, were considered uncivilized. And I get what Frantz Fanon is trying to say, even though I've not read the book, but I already get where he's going because it's about asserting who you are as your identity. we've talked about African leaders who had Christian names. They had African names, but then for them to go to school, they have to be baptized and get Christian names. Someone comes, his name is Rolihla, and then they say, no, you are Nelson from now on. Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Some guy called Buchizia, and then he's like, no. Actually, you are Kenneth. You are Kenneth Kaunda from now on. Kenneth David Kaunda. David was his dad's name, though. But my point is, to what extent do Africans really feel that the Christianity that they're practicing is their Christianity, and the elements of Christianity are appropriate to them? I have like a Christian Bible, a Catholic Bible, which is called the African Bible, and I'm not trying to say I'm a theologian or anything, and I read every all that stuff, but you don't have to laugh that much.
Sorry, no.
Nathan is the theologian, resident theologian here, but
Yeah.
okay, the African Bible actually has depiction, like on the side, it has depictions of African, like little African cartoons, and then under it has a little caption explaining what the particular verse has said in the way that is appropriate to Africa. Like words like, and I think it's meant for not only urban Africans, but even the rural setting. So they'll talk about things like calabash. They'll talk about things like communal living, explaining certain parts of the Bible in that very typical African setting. Of course, different societies, you can apply it differently.
Yeah.
But that's one thing.
Yeah.
And I think Pope John Paul, the longest serving Pope? Pope John Paul II was the one that allowed people to stop using strictly Latin to preach Mass. So you can preach Mass in, Bemba, in Sisulu, in Swahili, in Shona. You can dance in those songs as well. Before it was not allowed, right? And that's also a telling thing, because why do you have to now learn a foreign language for you to immerse something that is so intimate as spirituality and religion? So
Precisely, and I think people need to sort of I think there is. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Because I mean, in Ethiopia, the orthodoxy is very much part and parcel of the state state building historically in Ethiopia. So even the script is indigenously Ethiopian. I'll butcher the pronunciation of the name, but there is an ancient Ethiopian language that was used, and I think it's still used by some very by the clergy to read the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. So it's very much, and it's something that was maybe 600, 800 years old. It's a very old practice. So whereas for us, Christianity only came in the last. Yeah.
So I was going to say, wasn't the Ethiopian church the oldest church actually? But go ahead.
I think one of the oldest, African. Whereas for many of us, the Christianity, 200 years ago, I can bet you our ancestors were not Christian. In the year 1800, I can bet you that they're not Christian. It was probably in the last 200 years that Christianity has become so
ingrained.
So ingrained and intertwined with the way we do things. To be good is to be Christian to the extent. And then when you practice anything that is deviating from Christianity or any major religion,
I would say from the Western type of
from
Christianity,
the Judeo family. Judeo family.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
From the Judeo family, it's somehow considered like witchcraft. If you practice any religion that you used to practice before Christianity, it's considered witchcraft.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as traditional spirituality. It's immediately witchcraft.
Very true.
I'm just saying, and even the name witchcraft itself was generalized for just about everything that is traditional, everything that is African, everything that is African spirituality. And it was peddled against even many of our colonial leaders. If you look at some of the old texts and old newspapers that were propaganda against colonial leaders, part of the vilification was that they are practicing witchcraft. The Mau Mau was also accused of practicing witchcraft. Jomo Kenyatta was accused of practicing witchcraft.
Even Lenshina.
Kaunda, same thing.
Lenshina was actually, that was part of the way that they attacked her as well.
Yeah,
They basically said
yeah.
she's practicing
It was
witchcraft.
used
Yeah.
by colonizers, then Africans used it against themselves. When
Yeah.
maybe 60 years ago, your parents would have practiced the exact same thing. If someone is going to worship a river, somehow that is witchcraft. But
Yeah.
200 years ago, that was the common, you know, form of
Yeah.
understanding religion and faith. So, I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't be Christian or anything, but I think you should make a conscious decision about whether this fits you or not,
Yes.
whether your understanding
That,
fits. And I I don't
or
even
whether
disagree.
you believe it's the objective truth. But what I was going to say is that the next book we're going to do is this one, but I'm going to take a couple points, and
What's this
hopefully
one?
we can get the author in here. It's called The Theology of Mercy, Amba Oduyoyi. She's an
Oh, cool.
African theologist, and so
Yeah.
she basically was talking about how African Christianity is actually just an iteration of Christianity in Africa, and that it's very important for Africans to really practice, Africa. Because I don't think in Zambia we've ever tried to stop and to think like, what does Zambian Christianity look like? And
Yeah.
we've simply sort of adopted the, I would argue, Western style of
Yeah, for a country that's
Christianity.
officially for a country that's official, one of the few, handful. I think there's probably like 3 or 4 countries that are officially Christian by constitution. It's a discussion that you should have had before you decided to put it in your constitution, because the constitution
Right.
is literally your most supreme law of the land. You should have decided, okay,
Yeah.
what Christianity?
Yeah. I mean,
What's
because
Christianity?
yeah,
I mean, there's a United Church of Zambia,
yeah,
but like
because
it's
as this. Yeah, it's still a remnant. So, yeah, I mean, because I mean, the
yeah.
question, because I mean, the belief is that Jesus meets us where we are, So it's like, uh, well, what does that necessarily translate to, and what does that necessarily look like? But I think you had a point that you wanted to mention before I interrupted you.
I think I forgot my point.
You forgot. Okay,
I don't
sorry
think
about
I don't
that,
think
man.
I
But
yeah.
yeah. And I think that I don't know if we have enough time for this, but there are 2 points that I wanted to touch on, and I guess this is we'll see if we can get through this one. But I think one thing he also talked about was the painful realization that you are the other. So I think we've talked about this once, I think,
That's
where it's like the first time you actually realize that you are different, that you're not just a regular person, but like,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, that your skin tone speaks quite loudly before
And
before
you
you even
realize
get
this
to.
you
Yeah,
realize
and
this when you go to a country where your race is not the majority.
yeah, exactly. And I think what Frantz Fanon takes it a little bit deeper, because he acknowledges that for many of us, in Africa, we were taught with a European style of like learning, right? So you have these things, and like you're taught in basically like everything, English, everything. And so you expect, like, when you go to, for the first time, when you leave and go into a country where you're not the majority, that people will treat you with that same, the ideals of, that everyone's treated equal and everything. But then I think Fanon realized, I think for the first time, when a child looks at him and points and said, "Look, mommy, a Negro." And and he realized, and what he said his identity is defined by the white gaze. And he says he calls it a kind of a split, where you see yourself both through your own eyes and also through the eyes of a world that reduces you to your skin color.
Wow.
You know.
That's some powerful
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Just
Yeah, what do you think about
let that
that, man?
sink in. I mean, I think it's similar to what Leopold Senghor, the first president of Senegal, said on negritude, that the only time I realized I was black was when I left, when I left to France. And the funny thing is, Leopold Senghor, as you said earlier, about speaking French and is being so good at that. Leopold Senghor was, and we talked about this in actually the most recent episode on the Berlin, the Scramble for Africa. Leopold Senghor was probably one of the most intelligent French-speaking people in the 20th century. I mean, in terms of literature, prowess, poetry, he spoke French better than pretty much every French person. He beat them in all of their most prestigious exams. And yet he felt black when he left, when he was in France, where he basically was a perfect Frenchman. I think, like even Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said this in class, where she was called out for her perfect skills in speaking English and writing and so on. It was just not expected that someone like her should be the best speaker and sort of writer. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that no matter how hard someone might be prepared for these particular countries, even if you're through the entire British education system, the American system, the French system, whenever you go there, you'll still be, if you are not of the default race that most of these systems were originally built for, you still somehow have to come to terms with the fact that you are different, especially if you're from Africa and you have moved. Maybe if you're living in there, you always know that you're different and you're conditioned and you react accordingly. But as an African, who studied abroad, lived in diaspora for a short while, you do have to come to that realization and be like, actually, not everyone is seeing me the exact same way that I see myself, Because when you're in other countries, there's no such thing. Like in most African countries, there's no such thing as race. It's maybe more tribe. Even in countries like South Africa, tribal affiliation is much stronger than race, in my opinion. Yeah, tribal affiliation is is a much stronger position of pride, and even of class. Trevor Noah was talking about it, like class systems, race systems, political party affiliation, tribe triumphs, all of that.
Yeah.
And even in Nigeria and all of those other countries. So when you go to these other countries, you get surprised that someone is not even looking at your tribe. They're just looking at the way you look. That's it.
The way, They
already, And I noticed this, like, going on and we mentioned this in very early episodes, like where I went on a bus. That's when I realized it. Because I was there, like, I think it was like first year. I went on a bus, and then, like those double-decker buses in the UK.
Yeah.
And then you go on the top floor, and then you just stand, you're trying to look for a seat, and then you realize everyone is looking. Like everyone is just like, everyone is down there. It's not even like they're scared or like, you just realize everyone is like, oh, okay. And that was like a small town with a lot of white people. So everyone is just always like, oh, okay. So this is a black person,
Yeah.
And it's not even like in a negative or positive thing, but whatever they are thinking it because I am not white, Otherwise, if I was just an ordinary white person, they wouldn't have bothered. It would be just like as subconsciously ignored, But the fact that you are a bit of an exception because of your skin color, So
I would tell you about the time when
that's something that you have to,
I would tell you about the time when I walked into a gas station and like the gas teller was following me from behind. Like,
wait, a gas station? I thought that was in like a store.
No, it was basically, like the stores at the gas station, because like basically, I wanted to get. Yeah, because like stores usually in the evening on the weekend are closed, so it's like you have to wait till Monday. So I needed to get something, so I go into the gas station because it was close by. This guy starts like it's only me and him, and like he's standing right next to me, bro. And I'm like, huh? So in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe he wants to buy something. Maybe he wants to. I move to the other side. He follows me, and I was like, is this guy actually like following me, like legit? Like sometimes you hear about, like, I don't want to say race. I don't know what I can call it, but you hear about these things, and then when they're happening to you, you're kind of like, is this actually happening?
I feel like I get very shocked.
It's such an unreal moment that you're like, huh? Like if somebody even uses the N-word on you, you're like, did this actually just happen? You're like, this just happened.
Yeah, that happened. That happened to me once, and I swear I was like, I was in a state of shock because I'm not prepared for racism. Like I didn't live in that type of society. I mean, I know what racism is, but I'm not, Like I'm not conditioned
Like
to
you,
always think. I get
yeah,
because yeah, and yeah, it's very shocking when it happens. I think for people that may be
yeah,
born and have lived their whole life and their parents are also from there, maybe they are prepared for it. But when you're African, you are prepared to just be the best that you can be, the most excellent version. Don't break the law. Don't when they prep you to go to these countries, don't break the
yeah,
law. Get excellent grades. Don't try and
yeah.
agitate people or anything. That's all. You're not
But
prepared to
then,
be like, oh, I know my rights and that stuff. You're not really
yeah,
prepared for
yeah,
that. So,
and Fanon actually calls that, like, I think if I'm not mistaken, he calls that self-preservation. Like those are self-preservation tactics. So you kind of like reduce yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure I do this, make sure I do that, make sure and that's
yeah.
he thinks that's also sort of like a problem in of itself, because you're not existing, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's quite interesting to sort of like just that experience of like, you know, your just by your skin tone like carries so many assumptions that you're
Yeah.
completely unaware of, and
Yeah.
there's certain moments when you, and I used to do that when I was younger, where I would try as much as possible to fight those assumptions. You know, like
So,
I was putting in so much effort to try to be like, I'm not this, I'm not, because I knew that's how, like, or that I assumed, I don't know if I can say I knew for sure, but I assumed that that's how, people would sort of like look at you. I have like another funny experience of like me and my friends were just like hanging out, and then this random lady walks up to me and my friends and talks about this tragic thing that happened at a refugee camp, like in Italy or something.
I mean,
Sorry
this is
about
not
the
funny,
tragedy.
but like,
Yeah, sorry about the tragedy,
why?
but then what what does I have to, like, what do I have to, I, I don't know
Why did
you.
she pick on you to talk to you about the refugee camp? Like, why didn't she
I
talk
was
to some
like,
other?
I was like so confused. She just came to us and was like, "Hey, like, where you guys from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Zambia." What? And you're like, "Okay, yeah, Africa." And then she's like, "Yeah, you guys." I was really sad about
Okay,
the
yeah,
thing that happened
Africa.
at the. I was like, yeah, I was like really sad about the thing that happened, and I was like, I mean, maybe her intentions. I understand her intentions. Maybe we're trying to show that she's aligned, but it came off maybe in the wrong, not the best forms. But
Yeah,
yeah. Anyways, moving
yeah.
to two of the last points, I guess. The other thing that I think was very interesting, and it's a point that I think I wish many people would discuss, right? But in his perspective, um, he says that every form of human dehumanization is exactly the same, no matter how big or small it is. And he talks about how, like,
Interesting.
so, like, for example, and I unfortunately, I'll admit, I used to do this a little bit, where I would say things like, colonialism wasn't as bad as the U.S. slavery system, you know. But then for Fanon, he would say, like, what's the point of that? Like, what's the point of comparing two tragedies? Like, you'd say, like, the colonialism that happened in Zambia wasn't as bad as apartheid. So then the
Okay.
question is like, what's the point of that? Like, for him, he says, like, those those aren't separate evils. They're all a part of the same system. The idea that some humans can be treated as less than human, it simply, like, it in his mind, like, every form of dehumanization increases the humanity's capacity for violence.
The bottom line is that someone has decided that you are less than a full human being. That's what someone has decided. Like, and I've seen these interviews of white people in the days when colonialism was rife, and even in Rhodesia. There was a white guy who was saying, they were asking them, "Oh, do you have any black friends?" And it's like, "No, no, no, I don't have any black. Would your parents frown on black friends?" And it's like, "Oh, well, yeah, they'll take quite great exception to having black friends, but I have one black friend and African friend." He said first he said African friend. And he says, but I'm his friend because he's a very intelligent person. I learn a lot from him actually. He's not really African in a sense. He's actually very intelligent. right?
Ooh,
So for you, you know what I
yikes.
mean? So for you to be
Yeah.
human, this goes back to even all the other points. Like for you to qualify as human being, you have to reach like some kind of threshold. And I don't know, this guy was what,
Yeah.
in secondary school, talking about someone reaching a particularly intelligent level just to be considered an equal to him. And then there was another white guy who talked of black people, and where he was saying black people are incapable of particular grants of rights, stating that black people are something equivalent to intelligent pets, right? So why do people have to do this? People have to do this because for you to be able to thrive on a bed of superiority, you have to dehumanize everyone else around you. Like for you
Yeah.
to build some kind of superiority that you have to dehumanize everyone else around you, because there's no guarantee that everyone in your community is even in any measure superior. Even let's say just in basic maths or addition,
Yeah.
right? So you know what I mean. So I think the idea that all of this, every type of oppression, amounts to the same type of inferiority and what was the term? Amounts to the same type of like
It's
violence, capacity for violence.
capacity for violence. Yeah.
Yeah, capacity for
Yeah.
violence.
Capacity for.
It's true. It's true in the sense that it it starts from the point that someone else, by virtue of simply existing, is inferior and is less human.
Yeah.
In fact, just saying inferior is not enough. Is
That's a
less
great
human.
point.
Does not qualify to the full credentials of a full human being. Which that in itself is enough for you to now begin genocide, to now begin Holocaust, as you
Exactly.
said,
Exactly.
now begin
Exactly. Exactly.
everything. Because
Every.
when you
Yeah.
say, even like in the Bible, like they talk about human beings as equal, treat each other, and so on and so forth. But animals have a different classification. So for you to justify that, even in the name of God, you have to find a way to justify that this person is not a human being. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You
Yeah.
probably
I have a
disagree.
feeling
I don't know.
one day we're going to have a Christian debate, and I'll be here for it.
That'll be
Anyways,
good.
I'll get. I was
But
going
that's
to
what
say
I'm saying.
that.
My
Yeah.
point is that you need to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
my point is that you need to remove the aspect of human in another human being in order for you to commit atrocities. So that's the
Yes.
beginning.
Very
Even if
true.
it's apartheid,
Yeah.
even if it's colonialism, even if it's a protectionist state, just the fact that some people are, without any qualification or any reason, inferior and less human, you have already begun a process of sort of human atrocities. Because then you can even say,
Yeah.
oh, so when it comes to appeals, who's suffering more? Are these lives more important than these lives?
Then
No, but these are not really superior human beings. Let's just look at these other guys.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think that was a really good clip, to be personally honest. And I think the other thing he also touches on with regards to that is the fact that like oppression actually wounds everyone. So both the oppressor and the oppressed are actually locked in these cycles and like systems that are not beneficial
Well, that's something
for
Mandela
each.
also said.
Yeah, yeah, and so essentially what he says is that the colonizer becomes hardened, fearful, and dependent on that domination, and basically no one becomes fully human in a system of oppression. Whereas the oppressor is of course being dehumanized, and so liberation. So for Fanon, like liberation is not just for the oppressed, but for humanity as a whole. And there's actually a really good song by one of my favorite rappers, Lupe Fiasco. Really great song, I hope you can listen to it.
Where's Lupe Fiasco now?
He still raps. He still raps. It's a
Oh, I
really
don't
great
know.
song. It's called one of my favorite songs off of his album, the Testool. I'm going to butcher this, and Youth. And he basically says there's this song called Prisoner 1 and 2, right? And in the second part of the song, in the first part, I can't remember but in the second part of the song, it's a prisoner rapping and sort of telling the prison guard that, hey, you're just like us. You grew up like us. You grew up like us. You're in the same place like us. The only difference is that you get to go home, but you literally spend most of your life in here too. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
and there's a line in there where it goes like, "You piss in here too." Like You're literally like, and I remember reading the lines from Fanon's book where he was talking about how like both the oppressor and the oppressed are locked in these. It's locks these two individuals in those positions. And I remember just that song coming to my mind where it's like Prisoner 1 and 2, where it's like you have the person who's actually the oppressor and who's oppressed, but also the oppressor is also locked in the same system, and nobody's free when oppression is actually occurring. But you're about to say something, I think, with regards to Mandela.
Yeah, no, I just keep on thinking of Mandela because in everything he has always talked about, and that's the basis for his reconciliation, because the idea of apartheid was, of course, in face value, the white people are the main beneficiaries, but there's also a subconscious denial of their own knowledge and denial of their own emancipation, because they have to believe a certain narrative for them to sustain apartheid. You have to believe things that are simply untrue. It's your own type of brainwash for certain privileges that, sometimes are sustainable, but I don't think in the long run are sustainable, because at the end of the day, it goes back to the whole thing of, I think what you said, that everyone is sort of like in this prison cell. One is just on the other side. And everyone doesn't necessarily enjoy what they're doing. They just sort of give themselves reasons to believe that they're more privileged when really they're not. They are also sort of feeding into their own, lack of a better word, stupidity, for you to imprison an entire type of people. These are not criminals, entire type of people, ethnic group of people. You have to lock yourself from a particular amount of knowledge, particular amount of emancipation, and access, and just freedom. That's because at the end of the day, there's also freedom. You're also limiting your own freedom to understand, your own freedom to know, and to engage, in order for you to justify some pseudo to stupid science of racial hierarchy. That's what I think.
Yeah.
At least that's
Yeah,
what
so,
if I was a white person during apartheid, that's how I would feel. Like, okay, I'm not allowed
Yeah.
to talk about, like I can't come with my fun facts the way I like talking about my fun facts. Because if I come in, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, fun fact, by the way, the battle of blah 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 in 19. Oh, yeah, don't talk about that. Black people never succeeded in any battle. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the Rhodesian Great Zimbabwe, there was a narrative that Great Zimbabwe is too sophisticated a structure, because that's another part of dehumanization. You have to remove every success or achievement of a culture in order for them to be stripped off of their dignity. And that's, for me, that's the most important. Like, one of my core values is dignity, human dignity. And it's something you can't really touch. It's just about pride and understanding who you are, where you're from, what you have achieved. Like if someone comes and says, oh, no, actually, Zambia did not win the 2012 Africa Cup. Shut up. It's not in history. In fact, someone else won it.
Yeah.
Then that's an element of cultural. Like, people don't understand how deep ingrained that is in Zambian society, that victory. Every Zambian knows where they were. And then if you decide to colonize Zambia today, the first thing you should do is remove that part of history. You brainwash all the kids to say, we have never won anything.
Okay.
We have never done anything. We
Yeah.
have never succeeded at anything. And that's easy. Once you do not have that, then it's easier for you to be dominated, completely destroyed mentally, to the point that you just consume everything. You know what I mean? So
that is
my
such
point
a
about
good point.
Yeah, my point about great.
That is such a good point. Yeah, I understand. No, that is such a good. That's such a good story. I'm sorry. Let me let you go, bro. Let me let you go.
Yeah, no. My point was, I'm giving a modern understanding of what the Rhodesians did vis-a-vis Great Zimbabwe. They came and saw this infrastructure, and they said, there is no way Black Africans south of the Sahara, because there's that Hermetic thing, hypothesis, that people around the Sahel and above were the more civilized Africans compared to those on the sub-Saharan Africa. So they said, there's no way. It must have been Queen Sheba who got the knowledge from Egypt, who built that there, right? So it has to be the lighter-skinned Ethiopians who got it from the lighter-skinned Africans, and then they brought the knowledge down to build such a beautiful infrastructure that stood the test of time of Great Zimbabwe. not black people. Like that was in history
Right.
books, in Rhodesian history school books, to tell people that this didn't happen. Black people, the ones you're suppressing here, are not smart enough to build anything. So that's why we are
That's
there
such a good point.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
That's
yeah,
such a
help
great
you
point, and
raise.
even just like that,
And I
the
find that to
previous
be
episode.
oppression. In my
Yeah,
opinion, I
it
find it to be
is.
oppression of your own
It could
mind.
be.
You know, telling your
It's
kids
the
that this is yeah,
it's the genesis of oppression, I think.
yeah, yeah.
One would say, I thought I ate with that quote, but anyways, you don't seem impressed. Anyways, what I was going to say, what I was going to say, the previous episode, it was really interesting to find out that like mining actually took place before, especially in Ghana, before colonialism came. That sort of a thing,
Yeah.
right? Because the picture that's painted is this idea that like people were just kind of sitting around and not doing anything. Like people came and be like, oh, here's the stuff. So it's really interesting, and I think that's also why a lot of people, particularly in the US, a lot of black people in the US are really putting in a lot of effort to trace back their history, because of the belief that like a lot of the told history has actually been sort of one dimensional and has erased a large
Speaking of
part of
Ghanaians and the gold, I decided to start wearing Zambian minerals.
Zambian copper. right. Yeah, so it's
And
kind
then
of
David Livingstone came and discovered minerals.
yeah. I
Never
mean,
mind,
it's
continue.
it's one of those things that forces people to be like, oh, even I would argue that it could even be a reason that justifies like I know I'm going into a different direction, but like black Hebrew Israelite sort of things where they're like the true Israelites and sort of thing, and that people changed our history, and so it's like you can't not believe that, because it's like, well, there's cases where our history has been sort of erased, or as you said, for the purpose of oppression. So that's a really great point. It's a
Yeah.
really great point. And to close the already long episode, I apologize. I think Fanon, to summarize what Fanon is talking about, Fanon isn't just writing about philosophy. He's essentially holding up a mirror and African people, like what you see, and more importantly, is what you see truly yours, or is it just the mask? And the mask is this thing that you do to sometimes for salvation, or because of the, as we talked about, the what do you call this, the what's the term? Oh boy, it left my mind. The not inequality, but forget the term. What's the term? I think we mentioned it quite. Where it's inferior.
What term?
Sorry,
Inferiority complex.
right. So the mask, this thing that you put on for self-preservation. So you certain way, you do things a certain way, you like certain products, you do certain, it's not wrong to like things, but essentially what he's saying, is it truly yours, or is it his challenge is stop living in comparison, to stop performing for someone else's gaze, and to start creating a world where humanity doesn't depend on someone else's permission. So yeah, that's a good place to end the summary of this really book. I would urge everyone to get it. It's actually relatively not really.
Just say the name of the title again.
The title is Black Skin, White Man. It's a really great book. It's I think cheap because it came out a long time. So
Black Skin, White Mask.
White Masks by Frantz.
When was it
Fanon.
published?
So,
19,
oh, gute Frage.
1952.
Yeah. So long time ago. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Still
it's
relevant today.
still very relevant today, and you will definitely live with something. So yeah, that was an introduction to the first book of our quote unquote book club. We'll see where this thing goes.
Make sure you make
And,
recommendations also.
for books.
Yeah,
Next
like let people.
next one is this
yeah.
one, which just recently came out. The Theology of Mercy. Or do you
Cool.
that? Yeah, I'm gonna try to one for this one though. So yeah, great.
Yeah.
And again, for everyone listening, leave us a like, please subscribe, follow us on all platforms, and yeah, see you guys in the next episode.
I am an African.